humanoids, Halfling Hannah here from Halfling Hobbies, and I did a quick poll on Instagram, which, by the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm there at Halfling Hannah. But I did a quick poll asking DMs over on Instagram, which did you do when you first started with Dungeons & Dragons? Did you start with a pre-written adventure, or did you start with a homebrew? And overwhelmingly, people said that they started with a homebrew. And I honestly think that's because we're storytellers. As DMs, we have an awesome story in our head that we want to share with our friends. However, that homebrew adventure sometimes is not translated the best. And even though we have this amazing idea in our heads, it doesn't really get to our players in the way that we want it to. It can be very difficult to take a big idea story that we have and break it down into parts that our players can actually interact with. And so what we end up with is this big idea campaign that totally flops. And our players never get even halfway through our story before the group simply falls apart. We have a really hard time engaging our players and keeping them interested in the overall plot of our campaign. This isn't because we had a bad idea. Our ideas are oftentimes very original and unique and interesting. We've just not been able to really plan out the story in a way that fits a campaign. So today I'm going to talk about planning out your homebrew session in a way that keeps your players engaged and interested. Before we get to that though, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to Halfling Hobbies so that you know anytime I release new content just like this. Did you do it? Did you subscribe? I'll wait. Okay, good. So let's get into my 5-step foolproof process of creating a homebrew campaign plot that your players are going to love from start to finish. Here we go. Okay, if you are planning a homebrew plot, here is how you need to do it. I'm going to give you my 5-step process, and I am going to create a brand new campaign right alongside you. For my players who play my campaigns, no worries about spoilers. This is a brand new campaign that I'm going to do as we go along. All right, friends, so here is my 5-step foolproof process for creating a plot event for a homebrew. I like to do this in acts and scenes. It's what I know. I'm an English teacher. I'm comfortable with that setup. It tends to work really, really well. So what we're going to have is we're going to have acts. These are the major events that happen that lead up to the final climax of our story. Within those will be 3 scenes per act. Those are the smaller events that kind of culminate in the major act. It'll probably make more sense once I start showing you how I do it. So step number 1 is to begin with the end in mind. So take the final end event or the final end boss and write that down. If the villain was to win, what would the world look like, or what would that event look like that they want to make happen? In our case, this is going to be our final act, and that act is going to be that all of civilization is destroyed and nature is brought back as supreme. This essentially means that there is no civilization left. Everything is taken back to the way it was at the beginning of time. Step number 2 from that, once you've figured out what your end event would be, you're going to work backwards and figure out what the major events would need to be to work up to that last event. So in our case, to work up to the event that there is no civilization left, it's going to be a 3-step process. So we're going to have 3 acts that lead up to our final 4th act. These acts are going to be that the elemental titans need to be released, that this group needs to gather extremely powerful nature items, and 3, that this group needs to gather power in order to take over major cities. Now that we have those 3 major events, let's break them down again. What actions need to happen in order for these things to happen as well? So our elemental titans. We want to release the elemental titans. We'll say, just for the sake of nice round numbers, that there are 3 of them. There's a titan of water, a titan of air, and a titan of earth. To release all 3 of these, they will need to go and break the chains that are holding them currently. Once the chains have been broken, the titans get more and more power. There are 3 chains holding each titan. Once all of the chains have been broken, the titans are then released upon the earth to create horrible, horrible storms and different effects in the area in which they were bound. For the magical items, we're going to say that there is 1 item of immense power housed in different locations. 1 is housed in a university in a major city. 1 is housed in a temple, and another is housed in a dungeon. All 3 of these must be claimed in order for them to move forward. And then finally, in order to take over a major city, the people in this order are going to have to create animals that are far larger and more aggressive than they normally would be, that they can control or unleash. They're going to need to gather followers to gather power, and they're going to need to practice on smaller villages and areas. So here you see everything kind of stacks up and builds up to create our end effect. That's what you want to do. You want to break everything down into smaller parts. What are the actions that need to be done to lead up to your end goal? That is step number 2. So make sure that you can list all of that out. Step number 3. Now you are going to come up with the organizations and the NPCs that are necessary to make this happen. So in my case, we're going to go with the Order of the Tempest. Their slogan or mission statement, however you want to put it, or every organization has to have a mission statement, theirs is that they are the storm that will wipe the world clean. This Order of the Tempest is an order of druids that have all come together for the purpose of wiping civilization off of the earth. Now within this order, we're going to have to come up with some NPCs, the first of which will probably be the leader of this order, or the big bad, as you might want to call him. This person needs to be enthusiastic. They need to be idealistic, young, and charismatic. They can be male or female, whatever race, whatever fits your campaign. But they are gathering followers to follow in their idealistic vision of what the world should be. So this will be your top person. Next, you need some order elders. These are people who are in charge of smaller sections of the order throughout the world. So these order elders are in charge of several other druids under them. Next up, I would also put some order deserters. These are people that are going to be scattered throughout the world who know what the order is up to and have left the order in order to try and warn people beforehand. So you want to come up with names and locations and the whole 9 yards for these NPCs so that you have them on hand so that your players can interact with them. That is step number 3. Step number 4 is determine your time frame. This is the number 1 mistake a lot of DMs make when they're coming up with their own homebrew. They think that, oh, time frames don't really matter. We're just going to let players do whatever they want. And if you do that, it's gonna end up like Skyrim, where people just totally and completely ignore the main quest and do whatever the heck they want throughout the world. And you don't want this in a homebrew, unless of course that's the whole point of your homebrew, is to just let people do whatever they want, then you go for it. But if you have a story to tell, you have to have it attached to time frames to make it feel more urgent, or your players are simply not going to engage your plot. They're gonna go around doing whatever they want. So in order to get players to engage with your plot, you have to have some kind of time frame. This can be as short or as long as you want it to be. Because ours is dealing a lot with nature, we're going to stick to that theme of nature, and we're going to say that at every full moon, a major event is going to happen. And that's kind of going to be our time frame that we base everything off of. That gives players an in-game month to mess around with things and do different things before a major event happens to get their attention. Number 5, the last one here, is now that you have planned all of this out, you know your end event, you know all of the events leading up to that, you know your organizations and your NPCs, now you are going to create hooks. This should be, at least, really easy to do now that you've planned all of this stuff out. You should be able to come up with hooks like nobody's business. Just with this one, some hooks that I can come up with are, as players are traveling through different forested areas, they can come across clusters of druids who will attack anyone wearing armor on sight. Once your players defeat these druids, they find strange symbols tattooed all over their bodies. Players could also come across villages that have been completely covered by vines, and all of the villagers turned into strange wooden statues. They could at first think that the villages were simply abandoned, but they could become more known villages, or villages that they recently visited that this is happening to. They could also encounter larger than normal and more aggressive than normal animals that attack not only them in the forest, but also villages that they visit. Another hook could be that they see an NPC preaching on the streets on like a box, telling people to repent because the end is near, but no one is listening to them. You could also have your players be hired by the university or the temple where an extremely powerful item was housed that has been stolen. They could go about the quest of trying to find this stolen item, and it could lead them clues to this druid order and what they're planning to do. So as you can see, once you have all of your events in place, it's really easy to think of hooks that can grab your players' attention and pull them into your plot. You want to make sure to have your hooks planned out ahead of time and give them to your players and serve them up to your players regularly to keep them engaged and interested in the overall plot of your campaign. Now, of course, you can have plenty of side quests and fun missions along the way. It doesn't have to be all about plot, but your plot should be thought out and served up in a timely fashion. Otherwise, your game is simply going to become stale and you're never going to get to finish that amazing story that you have in your head. If you want some more amazing side quests, I have a new ebook that just came out called NPCs for RPGs. This is 25 complete and ready-to-use NPCs for your game. Each one of them comes with a unique and interesting personal side quest that players can complete for that NPC. Be sure to check it out over on halflinghobbies.com. There's a link in the description down below that will take you over to that. Now that you have done all of those things, your homebrew campaign is ready to roll. It is guaranteed to keep your players engaged from beginning to end. Until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. Halfling Hannah here, signing out.